Now I'm continuing science adventure entry. Well, to be more specific, Steins gate entry that I skipped. Or maybe not. Or kinda. Well, if I count robotics nodes allied, the same as original robotics nodes, then Steins gate Linear Bounded Phenogram wasn't skipped, but if counting allied as separate, then of course I skipped this entry. And, of course, Chaos Shortface. Of course I skipped not only this entry, but also robotics nodes. And of course, if not counting Klaus Jojo entries which are unpublished, Fatale. Anyways, this video about Steins gate Linear Bounded Phenogram. But I couldn't figure out a different intro. Well, it's interesting, but I'm not sure how I should review it. Which is of course spin-off, but which doesn't have one story but multiple stories. So, I'm thinking I'll try sharing my overall thoughts first, and then about every story and say premise. But with that, there might be a lot of chapters, and maybe the video might be long. Well, you can tell by this video length if the video is long or not, as in longer than usual. Longer than 20 minutes. You can tell if it's longer than 20 minutes or not. Also, if you are watching this video, when it gets published, then you might notice it. It is the second Steins gate in video in a row outer variant space acted. As if there wasn't a review on a different game between these games. If there is anybody watching these videos. At least on the publishing. At least when the video gets published. It's because space variants like that. I made mistake in script like that. It's because Variant Space Octet is a short game, and with that, the video is short. Like, I haven't finished editing its video, because I need to write down, or needed to write down stuff about Linear Bounded Phenogram, while drugs and other things are present in my mind from it, or something like that. Steins gate Linear Bounded Phenogram was made by Femme, but nowadays it's under Mesh 12. Actually, Femme was still under, but well, whatever was said was made by 5D a long time ago now. It says mages made or developed or something like that. And they publish it only in Japan, but Spike Chunsoft published it worldwide. And it was published for PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, PlayStation Vita, iOS or iPhone. I guess. If iOS, it also could mean for iOS tablets, whatever they are called. PlayStation 4, Windows and Nintendo Switch. Well, for some devices it was only in Japan. Actually, most of the devices was only in Japan, of course. Because multiple stories are included, then of course the stories are from different character perspectives and are set in different worldlines. Some are interesting, others get punching or something like that, and then there are some that I almost feel indifferent about on the positive side, and a little bit higher than indifferent. Anyways, there are some that I could say that I will rate them, but others, not others. That includes the extra story, but I won't share even the premise for it. But I like it. And some stories make fit in some workloads from Steins kit, or they add stories from different worklines but very similar to those Steins kit worklines. But that includes that there are reoscities, which is understandable when it is only a spin-one. But there are significant amount of original CGs, so it balances out. More or less the stories are linear, and say linear in the table. Maybe there is little difference in some stories based on your choice, but I think they'll still lead to the same outcome. Or just to a bad ending, maybe. I didn't play around and I couldn't find a coin where it was mentioned about different endings for each story. And I didn't look a lot for a coin. And in some stories some animals are reset, even those animals that were received before time point or before when the animals were sent. And then there are situations where you receive an email when you can answer the email. Either the game doesn't allow you to use the phone or the email is received off screen, and with that the game doesn't give you the option to answer to the email. Of course, every character is its own pawn, which means there are different spreads for a pawn, and each character is their own pawn settings, even shared between different voltages when playing. Saying close-seated is the same character in a different story. Because stories are from different character perspectives, then of course there are spreads of Okabe. At first it didn't feel like Okabe, but over time I got lost. Well, it was in the original Steins kit, but there are sprites that make characters look weird, but again bad words indeed. Why is that the case? Maybe saying a long neck meme it doesn't help with the situation. Saying it a long time ago that I couldn't find it anymore. And there is an interesting take on how different characters deal with time leaping when it is necessary. Here and there are forced wall breaks, which turns out didn't stay in my mind. Like I forgot in what direction the fourth wall break went. But I know it was a fourth wall break. Actually, not that I'm recording script, I remember what those fourth wall breaks were. But I won't say what kind of those are. Well, here and there characters mention stuff about creating paradoxes, but then stops worrying about it shortly afterwards. Well, there is one story about some kind of paradox. Well, at least when logged from one side. Saying what kind of paradox it is makes bold that story, so I won't say what kind of paradox it is. Well, I said some kind of paradox from fans, at least from looking from a fan site, because I'm not sure if that is called paradox, but I'm counting as paradox for this video. Well, I can't figure out if that paradox can be fixed, especially with what happens in the story. But about what happens in the story later in the video, well, only premise what I think it is premise. There are flashbacks to very recent events to which were already on screen in some stories, and in others, or even in the same stories, flashbacks go before the story took place. And in one story there is a flash forward. As in other it shows what led to the situation. Again, I'll say more about it when I talk about the specific story. Of course, sprites are more or less animated, but there is one instance where CG is animated, or the sprite is animated. The trick into thinking CG is animated. For some stories, it felt like the endings came later than I thought, And then it seems the story goes into the conclusion or something like that, but then there's more of the story. There are references, or more than that, to robotics notes. Not much, but it is interesting to see other playing robotics notes. There was one instance that found Fortress I liked it differently than when it was already placed, and I don't know if it's something for the player to do or not. There is still bad audio film mixing or something like that. Every film is at the same film by default, but background music can drown out voice audio. And also sound effects might be the same case. So you need to upset voice audio default, not to almost to drown out voice audio. And of course I used a committee of zero translation patch, but even with that, there were translations that I didn't like, but I don't know if it was the patch fault or the game's fault, at least for some translations. Like the same thing translated differently. For example, romantic translated to be romantic, and adventurous, which is the only thing I noticed for this example. Then make queen is translated as make queen quadruple ngas. Well, not in all stories, but it was only in fun. So different times were get on translations for different stories. Probably in both cases, official translation and fun translation. In this case, is written twice, and the last small toy is added, so maybe it just becomes triple now. I don't know what the function is called, but I hopefully showed it on screen. It is translated like that. Because of achievements, I noticed fun translations and different titles for some stories than in the official translations. For video, I'm using titles from in-game fans, which are fun translated, or at least that I assume. Well, that's more or less about the game overall. And this chapter might be the longest, so I guess now about each story separately. So for whoever doesn't want to hear even the premise of each story, then you should stop watching the video or skip to the wrap-up chapter. And of course I will be sharing about stories in order in which I experience, not shows how to I experience the stories. Agape Rendezvous, or should I say on in coma, acts as Alpha-Man to exercise. And of course he can do that because of time limit, and maybe Thanos, but I think it is only or mostly time leaping. When Agape sees crime, then he time leaps to deal with the crime as Alpha-Man. While doing that, he encounters a scalper problem and tries to deal with it by time leaping. It could make someone worry about Agape's, of course it was also me, mental state, as in where Agape is mentally. And the turns and twists that it does, it is surprising and worrying. Nyquist also said. Agape encounters scalpers because he wanted to help Nye to get a new game. And the situation out spiral loaded or whatever the saying is. Of course, other stuff gets revealed other scalper situations. Some of them are said. Well, I'm not sure if I want to reread this story. Maybe I could reread it sooner than I think. It's about Taro, or Ashita Itaro, going to a Comic Con or something like that to see Moyake feeling cosplay made by Mayuri. But because Moyake was missing, then when searching for it, Taro bumps into a cosplay grill cosplaying background character often shows that both like the and the background that likes the background character. Under it I don't notice a post on channels shared by full LAOs surname related to the character sharing a code. With Monkey's Taro investigates the post to see if it's a troll post or the poster is in actual danger. I'm not sure what to say other than I like this story. Well, it is interesting. That still isn't enough. Well, sure, here and there are downs, but ups are plenty for that it is balanced out. For this story, I tried seeing if there are different endings and I noticed a phone trigger icon, but it still led to the same outcome, so this is why I assumed every story will lead to the same outcome, no matter what player does. And forever no Steins get properly after this or anime should know who the girl is, says Teros bumped into it. This is your first visual novel appearance. It starts with Maxi Goriso not remembering anything, and then second Goriso talks to it to remind it who she is and which memories are raked for it fortnight, while being in some weird space. And this is the second time where they fought while breaking the opponent. There's one opening in one of the previous stories. And now that I think of it, there might be only these two instead of four while breaking. Or I just don't remember, and I will remember when I will talk about other stories. Anyways, back to this premise. Afterwards, it is set in when Fatale machine is finished, which laboratory members want us. Every OKB is hosted, so Goriso wants to save OKB. Well, this could be the same for what was in Steins Gate, but from Goriso perspective. Or at least it is very similar for line to that for line. Even with the later part, it's a good refresher about part of Steins Gate's story. While also getting something new like a perspective from a different character. If I feel like rereading a story from Linear Bounded Phenogram, then I can see myself jumping into this story. It's about a a time machine being broken while seeing two variants of itself. One is from 4 fourth line, and the other is made Soteria, which implies that she is from FB's fourth line. So that means we follow a certain distance fourth line Only I can see its variations, but its variations can't interact with the fault. Well, the time machine got damaged by rain because she stayed late partying alternate meeting here that in time travel con or something like that. But while getting ready to fix the time machine, your variations rival Taro is Sosa's dead. And while the time machine is getting fixed, Sosa goes on a date with Taro. With it that or Taro goes on a date with his soldier daughter. And at least some kind of character says that maybe it's a joke. I thought there was some kind of mistranslations in the date scheme. I forgot. I just thought that it was or is a mistranslation. Okay, maybe I shared too many details about the story to call it a premise, but I couldn't figure out how else to share it. And also, I wanted to share drugs about some stuff from it. Overall, it's a good story, but there were some problems. They almost went too far in his with his perfidness, with his future daughter. But he was stopped because of Elle. He just is worse. He acts perverse to grills from his own fault. Other than that, he is sane. It seems sort of fit that might be a great example of otaku or something like that. Otaku follows over not only visual characters but also real grills. Sure, he can lose over grills internally, but outwardly I'm not sure about that. Well, he could step over silent or something like that if he isn't put down in reality. Okay, maybe he can say some lines, but he trying to do something perverse involved with grills from the same fault. It is uncomfortable. In Steins Gate, Tarot didn't seem to be that perverse. Or I just forgot. Well, thankfully this level of perverseness was only in one story. Well, the other thing, I don't think it is as bad as it is in this story. Sorry about the tangent, it should have been about the story. Well, that's Bartos and comfortable, but also it was foreseeable that it would be stopped. But it was worrying it might go in a different direction. But I'm not asking to really change it. Just sharing it made me uncomfortable if I think too much about the situation. Mr. Brand or Yoko Tennoji wins a lottery. At first not believing it, but afterwards he tries to make Noir happy, and he thinks it's better building the building where his shop is, thanks to the lottery. At first he flips up to rebuild or not, but after consulting someone, and then the building gets rebuilt, but that didn't make Noir happy. Then Alkebet proposed to send Timal, so it happens over multiple fortnights. It's interesting to see how different characters experience in a good fortnight shift, but it also makes the player disconnect from the character when the character doesn't remember the previous fortnight but the player does. Maybe the way the story is written could be better, but especially for a spin-off and a short story, it works. And I don't think there is something that I could go on a tangent, even about the details that I didn't share. But it is interesting. Well, this was a story for which I thought the ending will come sooner than when it actually came. So that might mean that I was kinda impatient getting to its ending, and with it, maybe I lost interest in it a little bit. There is none other talking about urban legends, things to act as superhero to investigate these urban legends. And of course, my Uri makes customs for it also for Soteria. While investigating the legends, various research emails for Chinese to well, also Ferris went outwards because she doesn't like people like and other weird things that she rockets outward. What else to say it other than I like it? Well, I don't know if it could be better, maybe it could be, but it is, it works fine. Probably there was some unlikable stuff, but those didn't stay in my mind. Either they weren't significant or there weren't a lot of them. Well, the story starts with a cat patch, or something like that, whatever the saying is. It is set in a world where local ownership is real, and it happens after some time after Mayor's death. And of course, the story is from Locke's perspective, and it starts with Locke being knighted. Only setup is shown. Even if private parts are hidden, I don't know if I can show it. Well, maybe I can, but I'll think about it when I'm editing. Anyways, back about the premise. It is also a world where Occupy can't sacrifice other people's happiness anymore. So Loki tries to make Occupy do it, but at first it doesn't work. But then Loki thinks the time need to pass, goes to cosplay for Mayuri, which she didn't do while Mayuri was alive. Sure, Alice in one of the previous stories, Mayuri was dead, but it wasn't immediately revealed like how it was in this story. Then again, how it was revealed in the previous story might be more sad than how it is in the story. Well, I'm not sure about that. And it is interesting to see what Loki attempts to do other than time leaping. It's about my origin out at its grandmother's memorial, worrying about what for his occupy and Marquesa are hiding. Which happens in a Fortland where Occupy needs to choose between grills. While Occupy tries to do it, Mayuri does something, which might lead to one of the supposed bad endings Fortlands in the original Steins Gate, but from Mayuri's perspective. It's both interesting and sad. Maybe some previous stories were also sad, but I didn't say it, or maybe I said it. Well, this story shows Occupy taking Mayuri as hostage is important for other laboratory members, which probably was the same case in that ending of Steins Gate, but where it shows that it impacts everyone, which is implied at least. Neither it was said or shown. It's about Maya Gekiro pointing a gun towards laboratory members at the time when routers reach the lab, but then it goes back to show and tell what led to the situations. It's by Maya tasked to infiltrate the lab to watch over the lab members and stop them if they go too far or plan to do something against it. Then it was about the IPN computer, while also doing other tasks around it. Well, this story starts with a flash forward, which I don't like. I don't like that the premise or prologue is something from the closure in the story. Like they aren't creative enough to write original prologue or premise. Which I might not mentioned in other science adventure reviews. Or it worries out it is written. As in I will at least indifferent about flash forward in those entries. Well, after encountering more flash forwards in stories, then I'm noticing it is, or at least might be, an easy and nice way to introduce the player, watcher or reader to the story. Anyway, sorry about the tangent. Now about the story and what it was here. Now about the story itself other than it was flash forward. Maybe the flash forward impacts the story quality in my eyes, but not so much that I lose interest in it. And of course it is interesting to see how Monica thinks, like being paranoid, which turns out to be wrong. It's back to Occupy, which starts with being in the middle of time leap. After time leaping, Occupy is some memory loss. Then it receives email from which he thinks it's about Mayuri being kidnapped. And by trying to save Mayuri, occupied by sending demons moves between 3 fault lines. Well, basically between 3 fault lines. There is mentioned that Occupy goes to a different fault line, but very similar to a previous fault line. So NC Occupy moves between 3 fault lines. And of course this is a story where what I'm calling a paradox segments. Because of that I'm not sure how I feel about this story. Well, it is interesting when you don't know about the paradox. Well, maybe you can guess what it is when reading the story, which may lower or increase the quality of the story for you. And I can figure out the solutions to the paradoxical end. Most of the reviews when sharing my drugs are just something along the lines the story is interesting. Only some small details for some stories, but mostly I said the story is interesting and nothing else. And the taunts that I shared weren't so low that made me lose interest in the story. And here and there I went on tangents about small parts of some stories. Even with those, I would say I recommend you to get this game, but at least on Steam, you can get it separately. Okay, sorry about the support. You need to buy Steins Gate Elite, which is worse than the original from what I heard. And probably that's worth your video. Also, I heard you can keep Linear Bounded Phenogram under Refuting Elite, but also it doesn't work anymore. I can try it out because I brought the bottle which includes Steins Gate 0 on Winter Cell. Actually, the bundle it's complete your collagen bottle, this turns out, which includes all Steins Gates game. And someone else tried to refund this bottle to keep the Linear Bounded Phenogram, which of course didn't work. I guess if there isn't any other ways other than buying Elite to get this game, then buying Elite only on sale I can recommend to get access to this game. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, like the video, subscribe and comment. See you next time.